Some women fall for bad boys. I fell for the one man paid to keep everyone else away from me. The irony? He was the most dangerous of them all, not because he could kill with his bare hands, but because he made me want to live for the first time in years. Picture this: it's midnight in Manhattan, and Solange Woodbury sits alone in her glass-walled penthouse office 47 floors above the sleeping city. The skyline glitters like scattered diamonds, but she feels more isolated than if she were stranded on a desert island. Her manicured fingers tremble, not from fear, but from the exhaustion of always being strong, as she reads the latest death threat slipped under her door. The letter is different this time. More personal. More detailed. Someone has been watching her morning gym routine, timing her lunch meetings, photographing her walking to her car. The realization hits her like ice water: she's not just a business target anymore. She's prey. But that trembling in her hands isn't entirely from the threat. It's anticipation. Because in 30 minutes, her father's solution to this problem will walk through her door, and somehow, Solange knows her carefully controlled world is about to shatter in the most beautiful way possible. The elevator chimes softly in the distance. Footsteps echo across marble, measured, purposeful, carrying the weight of someone who's faced real danger and survived. The sound makes her pulse quicken in a way that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the primitive recognition that her life is about to change forever. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our Dear Love Diaries family. Your special place in this community of heartfelt stories is waiting for you. These passionate journeys of souls connecting against all odds have brought together thousands of beautiful hearts just like yours. Make sure you hit the bell too, so you'll know immediately when a new story unfolds in our Diary of Love. Hello once again, my beautiful Love Diaries family. As I sit here preparing to share Solange and Cade's story, I'm reminded of how love often comes disguised as the very thing we think we don't need. Tonight, we're gathering around our virtual fireplace to explore a truth that might surprise you: sometimes the person meant to protect us ends up being the one who helps us discover our own strength. Our Dear Love Diaries community has become a sanctuary where thousands of hearts connect through these stories of authentic love. Whether you're curled up with tea in a cozy cottage or stealing a quiet moment in a bustling city apartment, you found your place here among souls who believe in love's transformative power. I'm curious, where in this beautiful world are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. I love seeing our global family come together through these stories. Chapter 1. When Cade McDonnell appears in her doorway, he moves with the fluid grace of a predator, his trained eyes cataloging every potential threat in the room except the biggest one, the way her breath catches when their gazes meet across the expanse of her pristine office. He's tall and solid, with gentle eyes that contradict his dangerous profession, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that can't quite disguise the coiled strength beneath. The first thing she notices is his hands, weathered, capable, with small scars that tell stories of hard work and harder choices. The second thing she notices is how those hands remain perfectly steady as he sets his briefcase down, while her own continue to shake with an emotion she refuses to name. Ms. Woodbury, his voice carries the faintest trace of Boston streets, rough around the edges despite his professional polish. I'm here about your security concern. Their eyes lock, and in that moment, something electric passes between them. Not the polite acknowledgement of employer and employee, but the dangerous recognition of two people who are about to become far more important to each other than either could have imagined. Before we begin, he continues, setting a tablet on her desk and waiting for her permission to continue, I want you to know that my job is to keep you safe while disrupting your life as little as possible. You built this company through intelligence and determination, and I'm not here to treat you like you're helpless. We're partners in this. The word partners hits her unexpectedly. When was the last time someone offered to work with her rather than for her or around her? As he explains his assessment of the threats, she finds herself studying him instead of the security footage. The way his hands move with unconscious precision, sketching potential vulnerabilities on paper. The slight favor he gives his left leg. An old injury, she realizes, probably military. The controlled way he holds himself, as if relaxation is a luxury he's forgotten how to afford. When he asks about her daily routine, she expects judgment about her early morning gym sessions or late office hours. Instead, he listens with the focused attention of someone who understands that details matter, that the difference between safe and sorry often lies in the things other people consider unimportant. "Your father mentioned you're engaged," he says, consulting his notes. "Will Mr. Pemberton be part of the security considerations?" Something in his tone is carefully neutral, professional, but Solange catches a flicker of something else. Interest? Assessment? She can't tell, and the uncertainty bothers her more than it should. Finn and I. She starts, then stops. How does she explain that her engagement feels more like a business merger than a romance? That she sometimes forgets they're supposed to be planning a wedding because it feels so theoretical? "He'll need to be briefed on security protocols," she says finally, which isn't really an answer but is all she's prepared to offer a man she's known for less than an hour. Cade nods, making a note, and she wonders what he's thinking behind those carefully controlled gray eyes. The moment that changes everything happens 20 minutes into their meeting, when Cade shows her the security footage from the building's lobby. As she leans forward to examine the screen, pointing at a figure who doesn't belong, he moves closer to get a better view. His hand covers hers on the mouse, and the contact is electric. Not the polite brush of fingers that happens in business meetings, but something that makes her hyper-aware of the warmth of his skin, the strength in his hands, the way her pulse quickens in response to his proximity. She can smell his cologne. Something clean and understated that doesn't try to compete with his natural scent. She's close enough to see the small scar along his jawline, close enough to notice that his breathing has changed slightly, becoming more controlled in the way of someone fighting a reaction. For a moment that feels like an eternity, neither of them moves. Her hand remains under his, and she can feel the slight tremor that suggests he's as affected by the contact as she is. The professional distance they've maintained dissolves, replaced by an awareness that has nothing to do with security protocols and everything to do with the undeniable chemistry crackling between them. Then reality reasserts itself. Cade steps back, his expression carefully neutral, but she catches the slight tightening around his eyes that suggests the moment affected him more than he wants to admit. "I'll have my preliminary report ready by tomorrow morning," he says, his voice perhaps a degree more formal than before. "In the meantime, I'd recommend varying your routine. No more predictable patterns." As he packs up his materials, Solange realizes that her biggest security threat might not be Darcy Branson at all. It might be the way her heart rate spikes every time Cade McDonnell looks at her like she's something worth protecting, not just something valuable to preserve. After he leaves, she sits alone in her office, staring at the spot where his hand covered hers, and admits a truth that terrifies her. For the first time in her carefully controlled life, she wants something she's not supposed to have. The threatening letter crumples slightly in Solange's grip as she realizes the truth. This man, hired to protect her from danger, might just be the most dangerous thing that's ever walked into her life. Chapter 2. Solange discovers that having Cade McDonnell in her life is like trying to ignore a storm happening in the same room, impossible and probably dangerous. He arrives at her penthouse at 6 a.m. sharp, ready to accompany her to the gym. She's prepared for awkwardness after their electric moment, but Cade greets her with the same professional courtesy as before, as if her hand burning under his touch was just her imagination. Except she catches him watching her reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls, his eyes tracing the elegant line of her neck above her workout clothes before he deliberately looks away. The knowledge that he's fighting the same awareness she is makes her pulse quicken in ways that have nothing to do with exercise. The gym in her building is usually her sanctuary, the one place where she can push her body to match the intensity of her mind. But today, she's hyper-conscious of Cade positioning himself where he can monitor the room while staying out of her way. When she increases the treadmill speed to punish levels, he doesn't comment or try to slow her down. He simply watches with the patient attention of someone who understands that some people process stress through physical challenges. What surprises her is how safe she feels with him there. Not because he's intimidating, though he certainly could be, but because of the quiet competence he radiates. He's not performing his protection duties, he's simply being protective, and there's a difference that makes her chest tight with unexpected emotion. The real revelation comes during her morning board meeting. Solange is presenting quarterly projections to 12 of the most powerful financial minds in the country, commanding the room with the same authority she's wielded since she was 25. But today, she's aware of Cade positioned near the back wall, and she finds herself seeing the meeting through his eyes. He watches her navigate corporate politics with surgical precision, deflecting challenges from board members who still think of her as Theodore's little girl. When Richard Hartwell makes a passive-aggressive comment about emotional decision-making in leadership, Cade's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, and Solange feels a rush of warmth that has nothing to do with vindication and everything to do with having someone in her corner. After the meeting, as board members file out discussing her presentation in grudgingly impressed tones, Cade approaches her. "That was impressive," he says simply. "You have 12 people twice your age hanging on your every word, and half of them came in here planning to challenge your authority." The compliment catches her off guard. In her world, success is expected, not celebrated. Having someone acknowledge not just her competence but the skill required to achieve it feels like being seen for the first time. "You were watching the room dynamics," she observes. "That's not really security work." "Everything is security work when it comes to protecting someone," he replies. "Understanding who might undermine you, who supports you, who's likely to cause problems, it all matters." The conversation is interrupted by Finn Pemberton's arrival for their scheduled lunch. Solange watches Cade assess her fiancé with the same professional attention he gives every potential threat, and she wonders what he sees. Finn is exactly what he appears to be: privileged, polished, accustomed to deference. He greets Cade with the casual dismissal of someone who's never had to worry about real problems, extending a hand that's never known calluses or scars. "So you're the bodyguard," Finn says with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "I have to say, Solange, I'm not sure all this security theater is necessary. Darcy Branson is all bluster and no substance." Solange sees Cade's expression remain perfectly neutral, but something cold flickers in his gray eyes. The dismissal of a legitimate threat, the casual reference to security theater. It reveals exactly the kind of privileged blindness that makes Cade's steady competence even more attractive by comparison. Later that evening, during a business dinner that Finn insists they attend despite Cade's security concerns, the threats escalate dramatically. Someone approaches their table with unervingly specific knowledge about Solange's daily routines, her gym schedule, her preferred coffee shop, even details about her private meetings that shouldn't be public knowledge. The conversation seems innocent enough, compliments about her business acumen, questions about upcoming projects, but the level of detail suggests surveillance that goes far beyond casual observation. When the stranger mentions her lovely blue office on the 47th floor and asks if she still takes her coffee with just a touch of cream, Solange's blood runs cold. Cade materializes beside their table with fluid grace, his hand positioned to reach his weapon while maintaining the appearance of casual conversation. "Ms. Woodbury, your car is ready whenever you'd like to leave. It's code 4, we need to extract you now," delivered with perfect social polish. But as he speaks, his hand settles on the small of her back, protective, reassuring, and unmistakably possessive in a way that makes her pulse spike. As they move toward the exit, Finn hurries to catch up, clearly irritated by the abrupt departure. "This is becoming ridiculous, Solange. We can't leave every social event early because your bodyguard gets nervous." The dismissive tone makes something snap inside her, and she turns to face her fiancé in the restaurant's foyer, acutely aware of Cade listening from just behind her shoulder. "My bodyguard gets nervous because someone has been photographing my private activities and making specific threats about my safety," she says, her voice carrying an edge that makes several nearby diners glance over. "Perhaps you should be nervous too. Solange, you're overreacting." That man was probably just a fan of your business success. A fan who knows what coffee I drink and which floor my office is on. Her voice rises slightly, months of frustration finally finding an outlet. A fan who can describe the layout of my private gym. Finn's expression shifts to embarrassed annoyance. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene. She stares at him, suddenly seeing their relationship with crystal clarity. Someone is stalking me, and your biggest concern is that I might embarrass you by taking it seriously? The words hang between them, and for the first time, Finn seems to realize that this isn't about social discomfort or wounded pride. This is about the fundamental disconnect between them, his inability to see her as someone who might need protection rather than management. In the car afterward, with Cade driving and classical music playing softly, the tension is thick enough to cut. Solange stares out at the city lights, processing not just the evening's threat but the realization that her fiancé's first instinct is always to minimize her concerns rather than address them. Are you all right? Cade asks quietly, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror. The simple question, asked with genuine concern rather than social obligation, makes her throat tight with emotion. When was the last time someone asked how she was feeling and actually wanted to hear the answer? I don't know, she admits, which is more honesty than she's offered anyone in months. Over the following week, as the threats from Darcy Branson continue to escalate with increasingly sophisticated surveillance photos, their carefully maintained professional boundaries begin to crack under the pressure of forced proximity and undeniable attraction. I can already feel the tension building between them, can't you? That moment when two people meet and everything shifts. Have you experienced that instant recognition that someone is going to change your life? Share in the comments what that felt like for you. Chapter 3. The breaking point comes on a night when the city feels electric with possibility and Solange can't sleep. It's 2 a.m. when she finds herself in her private library, still wearing the charcoal business suit from 14 hours of meetings, holding a photograph of her mother, the only person who ever made her feel loved for simply existing. The library has always been her sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook Central Park, and built-in shelves hold first editions and family photos rather than corporate reports. It's the one room in her penthouse that feels like a home rather than a showpiece. Earlier that day, Lucia Sancho, her house manager and the closest thing to a mother she's had since Maria died, had left the photograph on her desk with a handwritten note. Your mother would be proud of the woman you've become, Mija, but she'd want you to be happy too. Lucia has been part of the Woodbury household for 20 years, arriving as a young woman from Barcelona and evolving into the maternal figure Solange desperately needed. She's one of the few people who sees past Solange's corporate armor to the vulnerable woman beneath. She's curled in an oversized leather chair, her heels abandoned on the Persian rug, when she hears footsteps in the hallway. Her heart skips, but not from fear. She recognizes the measured cadence of Cade's security rounds. He appears in the doorway, still dressed despite the late hour, alert and professional even in the quiet intimacy of her home. When he sees her there, disheveled and vulnerable, his expression shifts from guard duty to genuine concern. Couldn't sleep, he asks softly, stepping into the room. Apparently not. She holds up the photograph. Sometimes I sit here and wonder if she'd be proud of what I've become. Or if she'd be disappointed that I've let father turn me into a chess piece in his corporate strategy. The admission hangs between them, more honest than anything she's shared with Finn in 6 months of engagement. Cade moves closer, studying the photograph of a woman with Solange's intelligent eyes and gentle smile. Tell me about her. The simple request undoes something inside her chest. Maria Woodbury was everything I'm not, warm, spontaneous, completely herself regardless of who was watching. She died when I was 16, and I've been trying to prove I deserve her memory ever since. Cade settles on the ottoman facing her chair, close enough that she can see the exhaustion around his eyes, the slight shadow of stubble that suggests he's been pushing himself as hard as she has. What would she think of today's board meeting, he asks. Probably that I was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Solange manages a small smile. She always said I had her heart and father's shark instincts. She worried it would make me lonely. Are you lonely? The question is gentle but direct, cutting through all the polite deflection she's mastered in business settings. Looking into his gray eyes, seeing genuine interest rather than strategic assessment, she finds herself telling the truth. Desperately. I have everything anyone could want: wealth, success, respect, and I go to bed every night feeling like I'm disappearing. Like I'm becoming this perfect corporate daughter who has nothing to do with who I actually am. Who are you, actually? No one has asked her that question in years. Everyone knows what she does, what she owns, who she's engaged to marry. But who is she when all the titles and expectations are stripped away? I don't know anymore, she whispers, and the admission cracks something open inside her chest. Cade leans forward, his elbows on his knees, bringing them into intimate proximity. I know who you are. Do you? You're the woman who stays late to personally review every contract because other people's jobs depend on your decisions. You're the person who noticed that the night janitor was working double shifts and quietly arranged for his daughter's medical bills to be covered through the company health plan. You're someone who built a business empire but still remembers what it feels like to be powerless. Each observation hits her like a revelation. She hasn't realized he's been watching so carefully, noticing details that most people miss. But more than that, he's seeing her, not her performance or her position, but her actual self. How do you know about Marcus's daughter? She asks, referring to the janitor. I pay attention to who matters to you. And you notice everyone who works for you, not just the executives. That's rare in people with your kind of power. Tears threaten, and she fights them back with the same discipline she brings to hostile takeovers. But Cade notices the tremor in her hands, the way she's holding herself together through sheer will. You don't have to be perfect right now, he says gently. It's 2 a.m, and you're human. You're allowed to fall apart sometimes. The permission undoes her completely. Years of suppressed emotion surge forward, the loneliness, the pressure, the exhaustion of always being strong. She covers her face with her hands and lets herself cry for the first time in months. Cade doesn't try to fix it or minimize it. He simply sits with her, a steady presence while she falls apart. When the worst of it passes, he offers her his handkerchief, not an expensive pocket square like Finn carries, but a practical cotton handkerchief that smells like his cologne and reminds her that he's real in ways her engagement feels theoretical. As she takes the handkerchief, their fingers brush, and this time neither of them pretends not to notice. The contact lingers, becomes deliberate, becomes something that acknowledges the connection growing between them despite every reason it shouldn't. This is complicated, she says, but she doesn't pull her hand away. Very, he agrees, but his thumb traces across her knuckles with heartbreaking tenderness. I'm engaged to another man. I know. You work for my father. I know that too. And you think I'm worth all this trouble anyway? Cade looks at her for a long moment, and when he speaks, his voice carries the quiet conviction of someone who's made peace with a difficult truth. Solange, you're worth any amount of trouble. The question is whether you believe that. I don't know if I do, she admits. Then let me believe it for both of us until you figure it out. The offer hangs between them, beautiful and impossible. Slowly, carefully, he cups her face in his hands, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she doesn't, when she leans into his touch instead, something fundamental shifts between them. They don't kiss. Not yet. But the moment is so charged with possibility that it might as well be a physical connection. She can feel his breath on her skin, can see the war between desire and duty playing out in his gray eyes, can sense the careful control he's exercising to keep them both from crossing a line they can't uncross. I should go, he says finally, but his hands remain gentle against her face. Should, she agrees, but makes no move to break the contact. They sit like that for another heartbeat, balanced on the edge of something that could change everything. Then Cade's phone buzzes with a security alert, reality intrudes, and the moment shatters like expensive crystal. He checks the alert, and his expression hardens. Motion sensors in the parking garage. Someone's been testing our security protocols. The shift from intimate to professional happens instantly, but something has fundamentally changed between them. As he helps her to her feet, his hand lingers on her arm, and she catches him looking at her like she's something precious he wants to protect. "Will you be able to sleep now?" he asks. "Probably not," she says honestly. But not because of nightmares or stress. Understanding flickers in his eyes. She won't sleep because she'll be thinking about him, about this moment, about the impossible thing growing between them. And the look he gives her in return suggests he'll be having the same problem. After he leaves to investigate the security alert, Solange remains in her library, touching the spot on her face where his hands rested, and admits that everything has changed. She's falling in love with her bodyguard, and the most terrifying part isn't the inappropriateness of it. It's how right it feels, how much like coming home to herself it is to be seen and valued by someone who asks nothing from her except the chance to keep her safe. Can you feel the walls closing in around them? That terrible moment when you realize you're falling for someone you absolutely cannot have? Share in the comments about a time when your heart wanted something your head said was impossible. And if these stories of hearts finding their way to each other against all odds speak to you, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a moment of these emotional journeys. Chapter 4. The crisis that changes everything arrives on a Tuesday morning when Lucia appears in Solange's office doorway with an expression that immediately sets alarm bells ringing. "Mija," Lucia says, using the endearment she's employed since Solange was 16 and grieving her mother. "There's something you need to see. And something you need to know about your father's additional arrangements." "What is it?" Solange asks, noting the careful way Lucia closes the office door behind her. "I found this in your father's study when I was dusting." Lucia places a folder on the desk with the reverence of someone handling explosives. "I don't think he meant for you to see it." The folder contains payment records, additional compensation beyond Cade's contracted salary, paid directly from Theodore's personal accounts. But it's not the money that makes Solange's blood run cold. It's the memo attached, written in her father's precise handwriting, additional compensation for maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. Under no circumstances should personal attachment be allowed to develop. The papers tremble in her hands as the full scope of her father's manipulation becomes clear. He's been paying Cade extra money to keep his distance, to treat their growing connection as a professional complication to manage rather than something authentic worth nurturing. "How long?" she asks, though she's not sure she wants the answer. "The payment started 3 weeks ago," Lucia says gently. "After your father visited the office that morning." 3 weeks ago. Right after their conversation in the library, right after the moment when everything shifted between them. Theodore noticed the change and immediately moved to control it, reduce it, by his way back to the status quo. The betrayal hits her in waves. Her father's assumption that Cade can be bought. The implication that their connection is somehow inappropriate or dangerous. The revelation that every careful distance Cade has maintained since that night might be purchased rather than professional. But underneath the anger is a more devastating question: does Cade know? Has he been taking money to keep her at arm's length while she's been falling in love with him? "Mija," Lucia says carefully, "there's more." She produces another document. Correspondence between Theodore and a private security firm in Los Angeles. A job offer for Cade, effective immediately, with double his current salary and a signing bonus that would set him up for life. "Your father wants him gone," Lucia explains. "This is his backup plan if the extra money doesn't work." Solange stares at the job offer, processing the implications. If Cade accepts, he'll be 3,000 miles away within the week. If he refuses, Theodore will likely find another way to remove him. Either way, she's about to lose the first person in years who's made her feel like herself. "What should I do?" she asks, hating how lost she sounds. Lucia's expression softens with the wisdom of someone who's watched love from the sidelines for 20 years. What does your heart tell you? My heart tells me that I'm in love with someone I can't have, and my father is manipulating both of us to maintain control over my life. And what does your mother's heart tell you? The question cuts deeper than intended. Maria Woodbury followed her heart despite her family's objections, marrying Theodore when he was still building his empire, choosing love over security. She died young, but she died having lived authentically. She'd tell me to fight for what matters, Solange says finally. Then fight, Mija. But first, find out if he's worth fighting for. An hour later, Solange finds Cade in the building's security office, reviewing overnight surveillance footage with the focused attention he brings to everything related to her safety. When she appears in the doorway, his expression shifts from professional courtesy to something warmer, more personal. Is everything all right? He asks, immediately reading the tension in her posture. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Something in her tone makes him straighten, and she sees the moment he prepares for bad news. Of course. She places the payment records on his desk, watching his face as he reads. The progression of emotions, confusion, understanding, then something that looks like devastation, tells her everything she needs to know. You didn't know, she says, and it's not a question. Jesus, he breathes, staring at the documents. Solange, I swear to you, I never saw this money. My payments come through the company's payroll system. I had no idea your father was bribing you to keep your distance. I would never. He looks up at her, and the pain in his gray eyes is so raw it makes her chest ache. No amount of money would be worth anything if it meant keeping you at arm's length. You have to believe that. She does believe it. The devastation on his face, the way his hands shake slightly as he sets down the papers, this isn't the reaction of someone caught taking payment for emotional manipulation. This is someone discovering they've been used as a pawn in someone else's game. There's more, she says, showing him the job offer. Cade reads it in silence, and she watches him process the implications. Double salary, signing bonus, complete escape from the complicated situation they've created. From a practical standpoint, it's everything he should want. When did you get this? He asks. This morning. My father's been planning your exit strategy while pretending to support your continued employment. Cade is quiet for a long moment, staring at the job offer like it might bite him. When he looks up, his expression is carefully controlled, but she catches the flash of something that looks like desperation. What do you want me to do? He asks. The question hangs between them, loaded with implications neither has been brave enough to address directly. She could tell him to take the job, to escape before their situation becomes more complicated. She could maintain the safe distance her father wants, marry Finn as planned, and pretend that the last month never happened. Instead, she steps closer to his desk, close enough to see the pulse beating at his throat, close enough to smell his cologne and the soap he uses and something that's purely him. I want you to stay, she says quietly. Not because you're paid to, not because my father hired you, but because you want to be here. With me. Solange. Her name comes out like a prayer, rough with emotion he's been holding back for weeks. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to listen. She takes a breath, gathering courage she's never needed for hostile takeovers or board meetings. I'm falling in love with you. Have been, probably since that first night in my office when you looked at me like I was someone worth protecting rather than something valuable to preserve. And I know it's complicated and inappropriate and potentially disastrous for both our careers, but it's also the most honest thing I've felt in years. The confession hangs between them like a bridge neither is sure they should cross. Cade stares at her, and she can see the war playing out in his expression, duty versus desire, professional obligation versus personal truth. You're engaged, he says finally, but his voice lacks conviction. I'm engaged to someone who sees me as a merger opportunity rather than a person. Who questions my judgment about my own safety and dismisses my feelings as inconvenient complications. She moves closer, until she's standing beside his chair, close enough to touch. You see me, Cade. You see who I actually am, not who I'm supposed to be. Do you have any idea how rare that is? He turns in his chair to face her, and suddenly they're so close she can see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes, can count the small scars along his jawline, can feel the heat radiating from his body. You terrify me, he admits quietly. Good. You terrify me too. I've never been in love with someone I was hired to protect. I've never been in love with someone my father would rather eliminate than accept. They're so close now that she can feel his breath on her skin, can see the careful control he's exercising to keep from touching her. The tension between them is electric, desperate, weighted with weeks of suppressed longing. If I stay, he says carefully, everything changes. Everything's already changed. The question is whether we're brave enough to stop pretending otherwise. For a moment that feels like eternity, they hover on the edge of something that will transform both their lives. Then Cade's hand comes up to cup her face, thumb tracing along her cheekbone with heartbreaking tenderness. I can't promise this won't end badly, he says. I can't promise my father won't destroy your career. I can't promise I'm worth the risk you'd be taking. I can't promise I'm brave enough for whatever comes next. Despite all their fears, despite every rational reason to step back, Solange leans into his touch. But I want to find out. Do you? In response, Cade draws her closer, until she's standing between his knees, until there's no space left between them for doubt or hesitation. When he looks up at her, she sees her own feelings reflected in his eyes, the longing, the fear, the desperate hope that love might be worth the risk. Yes, he says simply. God help us both, but yes. This time, when he cups her face in both hands, she doesn't pull away. This time, when he leans up toward her, she meets him halfway. Their first kiss is everything she expected and nothing she was prepared for, desperate and gentle, hungry and reverent, tasting of coffee and possibilities and the kind of surrender that changes everything. When they break apart, both breathing hard, she sees her own transformation reflected in his expression. They've crossed a line they can never uncross, acknowledged something that makes pretense impossible. What happens now, she asks, though she's not sure she's ready for the answer. Now we figure out if love is worth fighting for, Cade says, thumb still tracing across her cheek. And whether we're strong enough to face whatever comes next together. Outside the security office, the building continues its normal operations, unaware that two people have just decided to risk everything for the chance at authentic happiness. But in this moment, surrounded by surveillance monitors and threat assessments, Solange feels safer and more herself than she has in years. Because for the first time, she's chosen to follow her heart instead of other people's expectations. And terrifying as that choice might be, it feels like finally coming alive. Chapter 5. But love, as Solange and Cade are about to discover, doesn't exist in a vacuum. And Theodore Woodbury doesn't accept defeat gracefully. The confrontation comes that very afternoon, when Theodore arrives at Solange's office unannounced and finds Cade there for what should have been a routine security briefing. But there's nothing routine about the way they're standing just slightly too close, nothing professional about the way Cade's attention focuses on her with laser intensity, nothing appropriate about how her entire demeanor shifts when he's in the room. Mr. McDonnell, Theodore says coolly, I'd like to speak with my daughter privately. Cade glances at Solange, a silent question in his eyes. The gesture, asking her permission rather than automatically deferring to her father, is exactly the kind of thing that makes Theodore's jaw tighten with controlled anger. It's fine, Solange says, though they both know it isn't. After Cade leaves, Theodore settles into the chair across from her desk with the careful deliberation of someone preparing for war. I've received some disturbing reports about your security arrangements, he begins. From whom? That's irrelevant. What matters is that you seem to have forgotten that Mr. McDonnell is an employee, not a personal confidant. The dismissive tone makes her temper spike. Cade has kept me safe while someone actively threatens my life. Perhaps we should focus on that rather than gossip from people who don't understand the situation. The situation, as you call it, is that you're emotionally compromised by someone completely inappropriate. You're engaged, Solange. The Pemberton merger depends on this marriage proceeding as planned. The merger, she repeats, letting the words hang in the air like an accusation. Not my happiness. Not my safety. The merger. Your happiness will come from fulfilling your responsibilities to this family and this company. It certainly won't come from throwing away everything you've built for some misguided infatuation with hired help. The phrase, hired help, lands like a slap, reducing Cade to nothing more than a service provider, dismissing everything about his intelligence, his competence, his fundamental worth as a person. You don't know anything about him, she says, her voice dangerously quiet. I know enough. Former military, PTSD, limited education beyond basic training. Hardly suitable company for someone in your position. Every word reveals how little her father understands about the man she's fallen in love with. Cade's MBA, his literacy, his tactical intelligence, his fundamental decency, none of it matters to Theodore because it doesn't fit the narrow definition of acceptable that governs their social circle. And I know, Theodore continues, that he's been offered a position in Los Angeles that would solve this problem cleanly. I suggest you encourage him to accept it. No. The word comes out sharper than she intended, carrying all the force of a woman who's finally reached her limit. No. I'm not ending Cade's employment to make Finn more comfortable or to preserve some outdated notion of appropriate social boundaries. He's excellent at his job, and I trust his judgment about my safety more than anyone else's opinions about propriety. Theodore studies her with the calculating expression that built a financial empire. This isn't about security anymore, is it? The question hangs between them, a moment of truth that will define their relationship going forward. She could lie, deflect, retreat behind professional justifications. Instead, she meets her father's gaze directly. No. It isn't. Then you're willing to risk everything, the company, the merger, your future, for someone who can never be part of your world? I'm willing to risk everything for someone who sees my world clearly and values me anyway. For someone who makes me want to be the best version of myself rather than a perfect version of someone else's expectations. The admission hangs in the air between them, honest and irrevocable. Theodore's expression cycles through disappointment, anger, and something that might be recognition. Your mother said something similar once, he says finally, quietly. The unexpected reference to Maria makes Solange's chest tighten. Did she? When I asked her to marry me, knowing her family thought I was beneath her social standing. She said she'd rather build something authentic with someone who challenged her than maintain something artificial with someone who only confirmed her existing beliefs. For a moment, the corporate executive disappears, and Solange sees the young man who once fought for love against social expectations. But then his expression hardens again. Your mother was choosing to move up in the world. You're choosing to move down. The class prejudice in his statement makes her stomach clench. I'm choosing to move towards someone who makes me happy. Happiness, Theodore says dismissively, is a luxury you can't afford. You have responsibilities. To whom? The company will survive regardless of whether I marry Finn Pemberton. The family name will endure whether or not I produce the socially acceptable merger you've orchestrated. And what about loyalty? What about everything I've built, everything I've given you? The emotional manipulation hits its target, and Solange feels the familiar weight of guilt and obligation. But underneath it, she finds something stronger, the certainty that her mother would want her to choose authenticity over security. I'm grateful for everything you've provided, she says carefully. But gratitude doesn't require me to sacrifice my chance at happiness for your business strategy. Theodore stands, his expression shifting to the cold formality he reserves for hostile negotiations. Then you should know that if you continue this relationship, if you break your engagement to pursue something with your bodyguard, you'll be choosing him over your family. Over everything you've worked for. Over everything you are. The ultimatum hits like a physical blow. Choose love or choose family. Choose authenticity or choose security. Choose happiness or choose expectation. Are you disowning me? She asks quietly. I'm presenting you with a choice, Theodore says, his voice carrying the weight of absolute finality. Marry Finn as planned, maintain your position in this company and this family, secure the merger that will benefit thousands of employees and shareholders. Or abandon everything, your inheritance, your position, your place in this family, for an infatuation that will destroy your reputation and leave you with nothing. The words land like physical blows, each one designed to wound and intimidate. But underneath the fear, Solange feels something unexpected, relief. For the first time, her father has made the choice crystal clear. No more pretending she can have both worlds, no more hoping for understanding or acceptance. And if I choose him, she asks, surprised by how steady her voice sounds. Then you choose to be cut off completely. No position in the company, no access to family resources, no welcome in the circles you've known your entire life. You'll discover very quickly what the world looks like for someone without the Woodbury name protecting them. Theodore moves toward the door, then pauses. I hope you'll make the right decision, Solange. For everyone's sake. After he leaves, Solange sits alone in her office, staring at the city beyond her windows and processing the magnitude of what just happened. Her father hasn't just threatened her inheritance, he's threatened her identity, everything she's built, everyone she's ever been. But as she sits there, something unexpected happens. Instead of feeling devastated by the prospect of losing everything, she feels relieved. Lighter. As if a weight she didn't realize she was carrying has suddenly been lifted from her shoulders. For the first time, she has a clear choice, the safe path that leads to a beautiful prison, or the uncertain path that leads to herself. That evening, the choice becomes even starker when Finn arrives for dinner with wedding planning materials and an attitude that suggests he's already heard about her father's ultimatum. Solange, darling, he says, spreading venue photographs across her dining table, I think we should accelerate the wedding timeline. Perhaps spring instead of fall? We could have the ceremony at Daddy's estate in the Hamptons. She watches him arrange the photos with the same enthusiasm most people reserve for planning corporate retreats, and realizes he has no idea that she's been questioning everything about their future together. Finn, she says carefully, we need to talk. About the timeline? I know it seems rushed, but with all this security nonsense and the stress you've been under, I think a beautiful wedding would be exactly what you need to refocus on what's important. The casual dismissal of death threats as security nonsense makes her want to scream. But what strikes her more is his assumption that a wedding, their wedding, is what she needs to feel better about her life. When was the last time you asked how I'm feeling about any of this? She asks. Finn looks up from the venue photos, clearly puzzled by the question. You're stressed about the threats, obviously. That's why we need to get you focused on positive things. The wedding, the honeymoon, settling into married life. I'm not talking about the threats. I'm talking about us. About whether I'm happy in this relationship. Of course you're happy. We're perfect together, same background, same values, same social circle. Our families complement each other beautifully. The response crystallizes everything wrong with their engagement. Finn sees their relationship in terms of external compatibility rather than emotional connection, strategic advantages rather than personal joy. But are you in love with me? She asks directly. The question seems to catch him off guard. Of course I love you, Solange. We've been engaged for 6 months. That's not what I asked. Finn sets down the photographs, his expression shifting to something that looks like confusion mixed with irritation. What's brought this on? Has someone been filling your head with romantic nonsense? The phrase, romantic nonsense, lands like a death knell for any hope she might have had for their relationship. He doesn't just fail to understand her need for emotional connection, he actively dismisses it as frivolous. I've been thinking about what I want from marriage, she says carefully. What I want from life. And I'm not sure this is it. This is premarital jitters, Finn says with the confidence of someone who's never questioned whether he deserves love. Perfectly normal. Once we're married and settled, you'll feel much better about everything. His certainty that marriage will solve her doubts rather than cement them reveals how little he knows about her inner life, how little he cares about her actual feelings versus the appearance of appropriate coupledom. Finn, I need to be honest with you about something. About what? She takes a breath, gathering the courage that brought her this far. I'm breaking our engagement. I'm returning your ring. The words hang in the air between them, stark and irrefutable. Finn stares at her, his expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and then something that looks remarkably like relief. This is about the bodyguard, isn't it? He says finally. This is about me realizing that I've never been in love with you. And you've never been in love with me. We've been planning a merger, not a marriage. After a long pause, Finn speaks again, his voice carrying a different kind of understanding. You realize this will ruin you socially. No one will accept you after this. Then I'll find new people to accept me. After Finn leaves, taking his venue photographs and his assumptions about her happiness, Solange finds herself once again in her library, staring out at the city and confronting the choice her father has forced. She could choose security over uncertainty, expectation over exploration, familiar emptiness over unknown possibility. Or she could choose Cade, not just as a romantic partner, but as a symbol of choosing herself, her own judgment, her own definition of what makes life worth living. The realization should terrify her. Instead, it feels like finally coming home to herself. Chapter 6. The next morning brings consequences and courage in equal measure. Solange wakes in Cade's arms for the first time, her penthouse transformed from a beautiful prison into a home by the simple presence of someone who loves her for exactly who she is. But love, as beautiful as it is, doesn't exist in a vacuum. And the choices they've made will demand everything from both of them. The first call comes from Alessia Dubois, her best friend and the one person in her social circle who might understand what she's about to do. Solange, darling, there are rumors flying everywhere. People are saying you and your bodyguard, please tell me it's not true. It's true, Solange says simply, watching Cade make coffee in her kitchen with the same focused attention he brings to everything else. I'm in love with him, Alessia. And I broke my engagement to Finn last night. The silence on the other end of the line stretches long enough for Solange to wonder if the call has been dropped. Finally, Alessia speaks. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? I have a very clear idea of what I'm choosing instead. Solange, be practical. He's handsome, I'm sure, and the forbidden attraction is intoxicating, but think about your future. Think about your position. The conversation continues, but Solange finds herself only half listening. She's heard all these arguments before, from her father, from Finn, from the voice in her own head that spent years prioritizing security over authenticity. But sitting in her kitchen, watching the man she loves move through her space like he belongs there, she feels a certainty she's never experienced before. She's not throwing anything away. She's finally picking up something worth keeping. After she hangs up, Cade appears beside her with coffee prepared exactly the way she likes it, a small gesture that feels monumental after months of people assuming they know what she wants without asking. How are you feeling? He asks, settling beside her on the couch. Terrified, she admits. Exhilarated. Like I'm jumping off a cliff without knowing if there's water below. There's water, he says with quiet conviction. Maybe not the kind you're used to, but something real. Something that won't disappear the moment you stop performing perfectly. Later that day, the most important conversation happens when she finds herself in her office with Lucia, the maternal figure who's guided her through every major transition since her mother's death. "Mija, are you certain about this path you're choosing? Are you going to try to talk me out of it too?" "No," Lucia says, settling into the chair across from Solange's desk. "I'm going to tell you what your mother would say if she were here." The unexpected reference to Maria makes Solange's chest tighten with emotion. What would she say? She would say that love without courage is just wishful thinking, but courage without love is just survival. And she would tell you that she didn't fight for your father so that you could spend your life settling for safety over joy. Tears threaten, and Solange doesn't try to stop them. "What if I'm making a terrible mistake?" "Then you'll make it for your own reasons, based on your own judgment, in pursuit of your own happiness. That's what it means to be alive, Mija. That's what your mother would want for you." The conversation gives Solange the strength for what comes next, formally resigning from her positions within Woodbury Financial that are contingent on family approval, returning her engagement ring to Finn with a letter explaining her decision, and beginning the process of building something new. But the most important conversation happens that evening, when she and Cade sit in her library, the place where everything changed, and talk about what their future might look like. "I've been thinking," she says, curled against his side on the leather sofa, "about what we could build together." "Tell me." "An investment firm focused on ethical companies and veteran support organizations. Using my financial background and your strategic mind to create something meaningful rather than just profitable." Cade is quiet for a moment, processing the implications. "You want to go into business together?" "I want to build something together. Not just a relationship, but a life that reflects our values and uses our strengths." She looks up at him, seeing hope and fear warring in his gray eyes. "What do you think?" "I think," he says carefully, "that it sounds like the kind of dream I never thought I deserved to want." "You deserve it," she says firmly. "We deserve it. We deserve to build something real and meaningful in ours." When he kisses her this time, it tastes like promises and possibilities, like two people finally brave enough to choose love over fear, authenticity over expectation, joy over security. Epilogue, 6 months later. 6 months later, Solange stands in the modest office space she and Cade have leased in Soho, reviewing their first quarterly reports while spring sunlight streams through windows that show fire escapes instead of Central Park. Woodbury McDonnell Ethical Investments has exceeded all their projections, providing sustainable returns while supporting companies that align with their values. The Darcy Branson situation resolved itself once he realized that Solange was no longer a high-value target. Losing her family connections and corporate position made the elaborate revenge scheme pointless. Sometimes, she reflects, the best way to neutralize an enemy is to remove what they think they can take from you. The office is smaller than her previous corner suite, the furniture is second-hand rather than designer, and their client meetings happen in conference rooms they rent by the hour rather than mahogany-paneled boardrooms. But when Cade appears in the doorway with coffee and the smile that still makes her pulse quicken after all these months, she knows she's never been richer. "How are the numbers looking?" he asks, settling beside her desk. "Better than expected. The Veteran Housing Fund is fully subscribed, and we have a waiting list for the Sustainable Energy portfolio. And how are you feeling about Theodore's latest offer?" 3 months ago, her father reached out through intermediaries, suggesting that perhaps they could find a way to reconcile if she was willing to return to the family business. The offer included full reinstatement, a generous salary, and tacit acceptance of her relationship with Cade, as long as they kept it discreet. She'd turned it down without hesitation. "I don't miss performing for his approval," she says honestly. "I miss him sometimes, miss the relationship we might have had if he'd been able to love me for who I am rather than who he wanted me to be. But I don't miss the cage. Even when it was gilded? Especially when it was gilded. Those are the hardest cages to escape." Cade moves behind her chair, hands settling on her shoulders with the familiar warmth that feels like home. "Any regrets?" She leans back against him, surrounded by the scent and strength that still make her feel safer than any amount of money or status ever did. About choosing love over security? About building something real rather than maintaining something artificial? About finally becoming myself instead of everyone else's version of who I should be? About all of it. None, she says with absolute conviction. Not a single one. Through their office windows, the city pulses with energy and possibility. Somewhere in Manhattan, Theodore Woodbury runs his empire with the same precision that built her childhood but couldn't build her happiness. Somewhere else, Finn Pemberton has probably found another strategic marriage that makes sense on paper and nowhere else. But here, in this modest space filled with meaningful work and authentic love, Solange has found something worth more than all the security in the world. The courage to be herself, the strength to choose joy over fear, and the passionate love of someone who sees her worth not in what she owns or achieves, but in who she is when everything else is stripped away. "I love you," she says, turning in his arms to see the face that's become her favorite view in any room. "I love you too," he replies, and the simple words carry the weight of everything they've risked and gained, everything they've built and continue to build together. Outside, New York continues its relentless pace, but inside their shared space, two people who thought they were too damaged or different or complicated for love have created something beautiful, a partnership built on mutual respect, passionate attraction, and the revolutionary choice to value authenticity over appearances. Sometimes the greatest protection comes not from walls we build around our hearts, but from finding someone worthy of our vulnerability. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking the chance to be authentically happy. And sometimes, love doesn't ask you to be perfect, it asks you to be brave enough to choose it anyway. Solange and Cade chose love. They chose courage. They chose each other. And in doing so, they discovered that the most valuable thing you can possess isn't money or status or security, it's the knowledge that you're living as your true self, loved completely for exactly who you are. Solange and Cade's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest protection comes not from the walls we build around our hearts, but from finding someone worthy of our vulnerability. True strength isn't about never needing anyone, it's about choosing to need the right person, someone who sees our worth and challenges us to see it too. Love doesn't ask us to be perfect, it asks us to be authentic. It doesn't promise that choosing our hearts over our fears will be easy, but it promises that the person we become in authentic love is who we were always meant to be. Sometimes the most dangerous thing about love isn't the risk of getting hurt, it's the risk of never feeling truly alive. I'm curious about your thoughts, beautiful family. Have you ever had to choose between security and authenticity? Between what others expected and what your heart knew was true? Have you ever met someone who made you realize you'd been sleepwalking through your own life? Share your story in the comments. This community is built on the courage to be vulnerable with each other, and your experiences might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Love stories like Solange and Cade's remind us that we're all worthy of someone who sees our value, someone who makes us feel like the best version of ourselves rather than a perfect version of someone else's expectations. Whether you're 19 or 90, single or married, just beginning your journey or writing new chapters later in life, you deserve someone who looks at you the way Cade looked at Solange, like you're something precious worth protecting, someone remarkable worth knowing. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to remember their own worth. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because tomorrow, we'll meet Emma and Marcus, two people who discover that sometimes the person who challenges us the most is exactly who we need to become who we're meant to be. Their story will remind you that love doesn't always arrive when we expect it, but it always arrives exactly when we need it most. Until tomorrow, remember that your heart knows what it needs, even when your head can't understand it yet. Trust in love's timing, believe in your own worth, and never be afraid to choose authenticity over expectations. You are worthy of a love that sees you, values you, and celebrates you for exactly who you are. Good night, beautiful family. Sweet dreams, and see you tomorrow for another journey of hearts finding their way home to each other.